Derek Chauvin trial. Court adjourned for the day. Jury selection expected to begin Tuesday unless appeals court intervenes. They say motions were reviewed during a short 1-hour session in the afternoon. Case resumes Thursday. They say jury selection was delayed for at least a day in the murder case against Chauvin, charged with killing George Floyd. Hennepin County District Attorney Judge Peter Cahill said he wants to hear from the State Court of Appeals about the prosecution's desire to revive a third-degree murder charge to the counts of second-degree murder and manslaughter in Floyd's death last May, which was captured on a bystander's cell phone and broadcast around the world. Cahill, who threw out the disputed count last fall, said the prospective jurors home for the day ahead of bringing them back. He sent the progressive jurors home for the day ahead of bringing them back on Thursday. This is where we're at so far. And outside of this news about the delay, we also have, they've set up barricades already. 2,000 National Guard being called in. This is always the craziest thing. I'm like, when we're putting these videos together and trying to figure out what the right title should be. It's like, do we mention 2,000 National Guard called into Minneapolis because they're scared people are going to go crazy? Or do we just give you like the straight facts? And I was like, let's avoid the National Guard's coming to get you. But I think it's fair to say, no matter what happens, I think we'll see riots. I don't know what you think.
It's not going to end well. I mean, there was I wish I remembered his name, but there was a guy who wrote a piece on Medium way around the time that all this stuff was going on. And he mentioned, it's a part of the MPD's code. Like, they're allowed to use the knee on the neck or something like that in terms of restraint. And I mean, his whole argument was that it's likely that Chauvin is not going to be convicted of first-degree murder. I just don't think these charges are going to stick. I think second-degree murder.
They're trying to add third.
So I mean, I don't know how these charges will stick, but it's also, I mean, this is a huge sticking point for me because it's yet another in this litany of stories that involve law enforcement and a black person being killed that are completely distorted by the press. And you take this string of incidents, or you create this string of incidents. You don't look at them on an individual basis. For me, the Eric Garner case, that was more of a gray area. But then you have like the Walter Scott case where he got shot in the back, and it's a clear-cut case of murder. I think that cop is actually serving 20 years in prison.
Was that the one where the guy was running away?
He was running away, and the cop just pulled it, and bam, and shot him.
Right.
Like that kind of stuff. You're like, I think the Philando Castile shooting was also a bad shoot. But the
NRA, that was the one where he legally owned a gun.
Oh, right.
And the cop panicked and shot him anyway. That made me angry because I was like, the NRA should have been out here in 2 seconds.
Right. Well, see, and here's the thing on top of that, because there are many channels on YouTube that upload nothing but police body cam and dash cam footage. So you can, I've seen a lot of people get shot, but you can see hours and hours of what police have to deal with all the time. And when you begin to see, for instance, how a routine traffic stop that can be friendly, pleasant, can turn deadly like that, or you see, the idea of sending social workers to handle, for instance, like the
Capitol insurrection.
It's just because, when you see enough videos of like a 6'5", dude who's in some kind of psychosis or he's on drugs or something, and they try tasers, they don't work. They try beanbag rounds, they don't work. They try, people, they're emptying their magazines into this person and they still don't die. You know what I mean? It's just, there's so many more layers and there's so many more things that you have to consider that people just don't consider when dealing with the police. You know what I mean? Take
any one of these people to a firing range and then give them a handgun and watch them completely change their opinions on all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I recently was talking to some friends and explaining to them the first time I ever went to a shooting range, it was during the Ferguson riots. Mm-hmm. I've mentioned this, so fans of the show probably are familiar with the story. They said the first thing was, have you ever fired a gun before? If you haven't, we don't want you to go in there without someone to train you and give you the basics. And so I said I hadn't, but the guy I was with was like this hardcore war journalist who's fired full auto, AKs in the Philippines and other crazy countries. Mm-hmm. So he was like, don't worry, we'll teach him how to fire a Glock, no problem. And my aim was actually, no, my aim was awful, but I was consistent. I aimed for the chest and the target at 7 yards, and I hit him in the groin every time. But that's true story. I was very aware of how I was holding my body, and I could repeat that same position, but I was just shooting low every time. And they told me I was probably pulling my hand down when I was pulling the trigger. And they tried giving these pointers. What they told me was the average person that they give a handgun to can't hit the target at 7 yards. And believe it or not, the other people who were with us, they couldn't hit this thing. I was amazed by like how bad everyone's accuracy was. Now you imagine you're 20 yards away? The Mythbusters did this thing where they're like, a person with a knife can close 21 yards before the cop can get his gun out. So the average person in a panic situation, a cop, even with certification of some sort, it's a high intensity moment. He's freaking out. He's adrenaline rushing, and he goes for his gun, and the guy's already closed the gap.
Yeah.
And if the guy's further away than that, he's got to be pretty good, proficient with his weapon. People don't realize, man.
There was a reporter who did, who you can find this video on YouTube, who was very much, he was on that narrative of like, anti-police and all this stuff, and he went and underwent the training. And that exact scenario, someone, and there's videos online that you can find of people with a knife. And they might be across the room or something like that, and the officer will get stabbed several times before his partner is able to draw and take the guy down. I'm like, but this reporter was like, oh, his mind totally changed because he saw just how dangerous somebody can be with a knife. I mean, there was that shooting recently. Was it in Philadelphia where the guy had the knife and people were like, he shouldn't have been shot? I'm like, dude, he was having some kind of mental, I don't know if the politically correct term is psychosis. Or episode. Let's go with that. And Andy had a knife. And when you've seen hours and hours of this stuff and you see how it turns out, it's one thing if you have an issue with police using lethal force. I could actually respect that position if you have an ethical problem with it. I'm just glad you're not a cop. But if you're trying to say, well, they should never ever under any circumstances use, I'm like, dude, sorry, man, that's just not how life works. It's not how life works. You are divorced from reality.
I cannot ask, in good conscience, a cop to go out there knowing there are risks, and I don't mean all the time. It's not, I'm sure they can be on edge in many circumstances. It's not like every day they go out there, on the verge of dying, but it is a lottery ticket where if you get those numbers right, you get a bullet. And so I'm not going to ask someone to buy that ticket unless I give them the opportunity to protect themselves in the event the ticket comes due. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I see these cops who go out there, and I think we need police reform. I think we've got issues with police accountability. I've experienced this in Chicago.
Always be better.
Absolutely. And at the same time, we just had this video go viral where a woman, I guess the story was a woman asked these cops to come in and protect her as she was going into her home because she was worried about an ex who was armed. And so the cops are like, he has a weapon, let us know where the weapon is. And it seems like they're with her to protect this woman. Dude barges in the door and she starts shooting like crazy. This is a reality, man, when you have to deal with the violence and the anger. And so here's what ends up happening is we're asking cops to enter the situation, but we're also asking them to essentially throw themselves in the sacrificial dagger in the event that something goes wrong. So you have, I think the George Floyd thing was a very, very tragic case with a whole lot of problems. And I do think that Chauvin bears some responsibility for this. That's why I said manslaughter may actually be an actual outcome. And the reason for it, he remained on the neck 3 minutes after Floyd was unresponsive. And so maybe you argue that the training says that's what you're supposed to do because it allows them to breathe. Maybe your argument is he should have sat him up and then rendered aid or something. The challenge is, so like I said, they might actually say manslaughter. Like, you could have done something. You were the one who restrained him. And the restraint was part of his reason for death. But you have many circumstances where, well, let me start by saying this. You have many circumstances where cops screw up. Philando Castile, legal gun owner in his car, telling the cop, I do have my legal gun, and the cop panics and shoots him anyway. That's messed up. But then you have, these circumstances where in that one viral video where these two cops are trying to subdue a guy, and then he runs to his door, grabs the gun, and just shoots both these cops like crazy. That's real life. These things happen.
I think, is that the video where the one cop just starts, he lets out this blood-curdling shriek, and then it's just silent after he gets, that's some chilling stuff.
It is.
But you have to be aware of that kind of thing and that kind of danger before you can really offer any sort of nuanced opinion on these kinds of matters.
And now think about it. So for all the things I've seen wrong, like you mentioned, was the Michael Scott case.
Yeah.
Walter Scott, sorry. Yeah. Michael Scott is from The Office.
Yes. Great actor.
Not him. No, sorry. Walter Scott was running away, and the cop just looks and then puts a bullet in his back. He went to prison for that. Yeah. He got held accountable. I'm glad to hear it. For all these other stories, you got to understand the nuance. And the way I usually put it is, I hear the left say, oh, the likelihood they get shot or whatever is slim to none. And I'm like, no, I hear you. So what you're saying is you think these guys should take a job that doesn't pay very well, has crappy hours, and every day is a lottery ticket where if their number comes due, they die? I'm sorry, man. I'm going to give them a weapon and say, in the event that happens, because we're asking you to do this on our behalf, you defend yourselves. And that means there's going to be there's going to be accidents. There's going to be bad people. And it means it's a part of life. We got to figure it out. When that dude shot, Walter Scott in the back, he got arrested and charged for it. He got held accountable, thankfully, because of video. So we need to make sure we're being reasonable. In the event with George Floyd, I think it's interesting. I think they overcharged the guy.
Yeah.
And I think the activists want retribution. I don't think justice is the right word for it.
The question is, was he defending himself? I agree with you, because their job is they need to defend themselves. But was Chauvin defending himself?
He wasn't.
It didn't seem like it.
No, and I definitely think the media and the left makes it out to be substantially worse than it was, especially after we saw the body camera footage. Floyd saying, take me out, put me on the ground, things like that. But I do think there is a legitimate question where we can have a debate about manslaughter, not murder. Mm-hmm, the murder charges, I think, are going to fall off because I think third-degree murder is that you intended to cause harm that resulted in death. But I don't think, look, so we can pull this up. We have this tweet from Brandon Stahl. You can actually see, this is from the MPD training manual, apparently. It shows the cops putting their knee on the neck of another officer. It's not a real, submission. This is a training video. YouTube, don't demonetize us. This is the police training material. You can see they're trained to do this.
Yeah.
And they're told to do it because they say, place the subject in the recovery position to alleviate positional asphyxia. The point of putting their knee on the neck is specifically to stop them from suffocating. The question is, George Floyd was put in the custody of these officers. When the officers assume custody of an individual, they have a responsibility now. They have a responsibility to make sure that they're not causing the person harm or creating undue stress and, checking on this individual. I will say, the reason it's a tough question is because it was a matter of, it was 9 minutes. To me, that's crazy. That's a long time to be kneeling on somebody, 9 minutes. But it was 3 minutes where Floyd was unresponsive. What should he have done and what was he doing and what are the real questions we're trying to ask? Ultimately, I'm not sure prison solves anything. Maybe he gets kicked off the force because they were like, we need people who they're going to be more attuned to this. But prison time? I mean, I think that's bold.
Prison time, it might make some people feel better, but I mean, let's be real. No matter how this shakes out, which, I think we're all in agreement that it's not going to be what a lot of people wanted, the people seeking retribution want it to be. And,
I think they want first-degree murder.
But, they're already primed now because as soon as the lesser charges go through, they're going to say this is yet another instance of the racist system in America, being unjust toward Black Americans. And, I'm trying to stave off this creeping nihilism. But, there are a lot of instances where I feel like, there's just, you can't, I guess I shouldn't say can't, but I just don't know how you walk back from all of this. This
Be
is
optimistic?
Well, this is what's funny because I tend to be more pessimistic, but I also feel like, well, if you become demoralized and you become depressed, then whoever they is, they win.
Right.
But then, I spend a lot of time down in Atlanta now, and at my job, which I won't mention because I don't want people to track me down and be crazy, but it's my job to enforce a dress code. Let's say that. And so the minute that somebody shows up and they're not in dress code and they happen to not be white, they immediately jump to, well, you're racist. Even though, and then they're like, what about that person? Oh, you mean that black person wearing a blazer and dress shoes that is in dress code? Okay, if there are black people inside, then how is it racist that you can't get inside? But that's where their mind jumps to immediately.
Right.
This is.
Do they call you racist?
Yeah. Oh, Uncle Tom. They call me a house Negro, except they use the other N word. It's just the most. One of the guys I work with is South African. I'm like, how much blacker can you get than someone from Africa? And yet they call him the same kind of things when we're just enforcing these rules.
It's about power.
But it's deeper than that though, because. I think about the average life of a black kid in America, and they wake up in the morning, they go to school, and what are their educators telling them? Oh, America is racist. Civil War, Abe Lincoln, MLK. their favorite athletes, their favorite comedians, their favorite musicians, they all have this same sort of message. They go on social media, they watch the news, it's the same message. Their relatives, their friends and family are all saying the same things to them. So this is a constant inundation of this worldview that says that white people are evil, America is racist, and this is generations and generations now. And again, in my darker moments, I say, how do you combat that? Someone like me comes along, and here's another irony of it, because when I was a kid, it was the other, people think that I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. That is not true at all. But I grew up in around working class, sort of more on the poorer end of things, and because of the way I carry myself, the fact that I had the temerity to turn in my homework on time, or at least to try, I was accused of acting white. And now what's happening is that you have this educated class now, this intelligentsia, this bourgeois class or whatever of white, but also black people who are also saying the same things about, if you're punctual, if you're disciplined, if you're a rugged individualist, then you're striving for whiteness. If you're looking for financial success or whatever, then you're striving for whiteness. So now you're getting it from the bottom and from the top as well. And so I don't know where you have to find some way to break out of that and escape from it. And I don't know what those avenues are for people.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.